You're not alone. If you need someone to talk to today, please contact Crisis Services Canada by either calling them at 1-833-456-4566 all hours of the day, or you can text them at 45645 at 4 p.m. to 12 a.m. Eastern Time. Remember, you're not alone, and Crisis Services Canada is here to help. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Wednesday edition of Rise and Shine Manitoba on ASTV Productions. I'm your host, Graeme Forsyth. Today's edition of the show is brought to you by our proud sponsor of Rise and Shine Manitoba, Fabricland Winkler, Evolve Green, Systems Beauty Colleges, as well as AETI. And the reason we didn't do a Monday show this week was I was feeling really under the weather. I'm not going to give you guys all the details because that'd be TMI. But yeah, feeling great on this Wednesday morning, ready to kick off this edition of Manitoba Show here. We're going to have Harry Siemens join the show today, as well as Adam Wedlake, Executive Director of Basketball Manitoba. Then, as always, we'll finish off with an edition of Graham's Opinion. Going to be a lot of fun today on Manitoba's show. So, you know what time it is, Manitoba. It's time to rise and shine here on ASTV Productions. And of course, as always on our Rise and Shine Manitoba episodes here on ASTV, we're going to start off with some agriculture, and who better to be joining us than the man himself on the Farm Report, Harry Siemens. Of course, the Farm Report brought to you by Wolf Enterprises. We got him in the studio now. Harry, how's it going on this Wednesday morning rather than a Monday morning? How's your week gone so far?
Just turn off my phone and then we'll be good. Yeah, my week's been going great so far, and it's half over. And just right off the top, I just want to share a couple of attitude stories. We've had rain. We've had rain from anywhere from, I think here in Winkler, probably the least amount at still 3.5 inches. Some places have had 6, 7, maybe even 8 inches of rain across the province. So I don't think we have any area that's didn't get a decent rain. I had a good soaker, even though it was so dry that we can still use probably another 4 or 5 to get the streams and rivers flowing properly. But Tom Tycrow, who's a cattle producer, 400 head of cattle and calves, that's 800 mouths to feed, as he puts it out on the grass and hay, and all of that has been a real issue. But I remember talking to Tom before it had rained. And then he would say to me, I don't know if I'm going to have enough pasture to take me through the normal season because it was so dry. Well, when I talked to him after the rain, he says, we've got enough pasture and I don't think I would have run out. His attitude changed from where he didn't think he would have enough. But then he says, I don't think I would have run out anyway after the rain. So attitude changes big time when things happen. But one thing to mention right off the top as well is that right now farmers are sitting waiting to get back on the fields. We've had a few days of sunshine and we still haven't seen any real harvesting taking place. So a lot of the guys are waiting to get back on, even though I'm very thankful for the rain. And so the other thing, what this rain has done is it's made the fall work, applying crop protection products, fertilizer, tilling, winter seeding, winter cereals, and all of that is talking to farmers even since our last show. They're saying, "Boy, it's such a pleasure to go out on the field and to be able to work it and not have to deal with rock hard stuff."
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, sorry about the rain. I work a second job now. I work at my mom's a company my mom works at, Centennial Wire Products. And we have the doors open because it gets very hot in the warehouse where I work in there. And all of a sudden, around like 2 o'clock, start seeing a bunch of rain coming down. So nice to see the rain, especially with how dry it's been. But just talking about how this rain is going to have an effect, not only now, as you've already talked about, but just moving forward here into the upcoming seasons and farming here in Manitoba.
That's for the most of the farmers that I talked to about the rain. A lot of them said, it's too late for this year's crop, and I get that. But at the same time, it's already replenishing for next year's crop. Like if it had stayed as dry as it was before these rains started, and we went into the winter and we wouldn't get a lot of snow, and I don't know, we may get lots of snow and we may not, but having uh, having had these rains, and we're supposed to get more rain, I think, tomorrow and Friday, maybe the weekend. And so that starts to replenish the subsoil moisture. But right now, the streams and the rivers are not flowing yet because all of the moisture that fell in most places just soaked right in. It soaked into wherever it fell, it just soaked in. It never got to the streams and the dugouts and the rivers. So we need another 4 or 5 inches to replenish that part of it. But we got a great start. And so for next year, it means attitude. It means hope. It means being able to plan just a little bit differently than if it hadn't rained at this point.
Let's talk about this stage in the harvest. Like you said, there's been many farmers that haven't had a chance to start the harvest yet, but just talk about the prep work that truly goes into the harvest. Obviously, a lot of hard work goes in beforehand. Just talk about how important that prep work is into having a successful harvest.
Well, the prep work, it normally takes place in June, half of July, and almost all of July because our harvest normally it starts at the tail end of July and then August, middle of August. So the prep work gets done from the standpoint where the harvest machines, the combines, the swathers that cut the grain, all of that needs to be checked from the year before. Some people do that throughout the winter. They have to secure and make sure their grain storages are clean and empty if that's indeed the case, so that they have room for the crop. This year it won't be quite as big an issue because the crop is smaller, but it's mechanical preparation, it's mental preparation, it's the grain storage preparation, and just like I know my father was a big farmer, and I know when it came to harvest, when that first combine rolled on the field, it was like my dad's attitude and everything changed. Everything focused on getting this crop off. I mean, if you talked about doing anything different, he says, not until the harvest is done. So that's why I'm saying you've got mechanical, you got the physical, the grain storage, and you got the mental, the attitude. And it is. I mean, you just go. And then if you get a rain, you have a break. But very important. That's when the farm machinery companies, they do a lot of where they absolutely take that combine, that track, whatever, and they go through it to make sure that there will be as few mechanical breakdowns as possible on the field. That's why it's so important to get that prep done ahead of time.
Yeah, for sure. Just like in anything, especially in farming, prep work is vital to the success of, in this case, the harvest. But talking about cattle farmers, how are they doing at this point?
You know, in talking to quite a few of them on Twitter, right across Canada, even some across across some parts of the U.S. I'm part of a WhatsApp group called Canadian Agriculture, and it started by a good friend of mine. Her name is Louise, and we have farmers from right across the world, Argentina, from Australia, from New Zealand and the United States and Mexico and Paraguay, all over. And it's always about the same. If you're harvesting, you're harvesting. If the crop isn't as good as what you had thought, well, you just kind of compensate and move on. But the farmers are doing well from this perspective. The prices continue to remain at a high level, almost double what they were maybe even a year ago. But we have some caveats. In the United States, they've had, number one, they've had the Ida, the hurricane. Well, it destroyed some export storage and what Cargill has a big elevator that was destroyed on the coast, and so even 22 grain ships or barges were cut loose because of the hurricane. So all of a sudden, where China and other countries are waiting for the U.S. and Canadian grain, all of a sudden there's a kink in the delivery. And once you have a kink in the delivery, it backs everything else up. And when it backs up, it starts to drop the price. It can be a temporary drop because if somebody isn't buying, there's not the demand. So that's been an issue. I've been following that since yesterday, where that came out as a breaking news story where Cargill lost, and nobody right now knows exactly how much damage has been done. But that's the other caveat. But right now, moisture-wise, across the United States, I saw something this morning, probably about only 2 states, Indiana, and I forget what the other one was, that are not up to normal moisture at this point. That doesn't mean they had normal moisture in all those states before because it was dry. But at the same time, right now, we've got normal moisture, and that also bodes well for next year.
Yeah, and just shout out to everyone that has been affected and involved in that awful hurricane that has just, devastated a city in the U.S. It's just heartbreaking to see that, especially at this time of the year. But, just talking about that WhatsApp group chat that you're in, just to be able to connect with not only farmers from Manitoba here in Canada, but all over the world, just how cool of an experience is that, in the sense that you get to see the other perspectives of how farmers may be doing things?
It's it's the more I participate in it, the more I realize what a privilege it is. I'm actually part of 2 groups. One is a hog group, which has 270 hog producers. Most of them are Hutterite hog producers, and they invited me. They invited me on to be, to give them some additional resource material. So that was an honor. The Canadian Agriculture, same thing. They reached out to me and asked me to be part of it, even though I'm not a farmer. And so it gives me some added insight, believe you me. And I absolutely, make sure that I treat it with respect. I treat it with, there's things that are shared there that I wouldn't just talk about. But at the same time, it's quite something, when you see the combine going in wherever and compared to over here. A combine is a combine. It harvests the farmers all have basically the same attitude, and that's awesome. I mean the people say they have a resilience. There's a resilience with agriculture, with farmers, but at the same time, when it gets so dry as we had, then some of the farmers said we don't want to hear that word right now because our resilience is starting to to back off a little bit, because it just, in some areas, there just wasn't a crop. Had it not been for the high prices, they would have been in real trouble. But that'll pull them all through.
We'll finish off with this today, Harry. As always, Siemens says Harry Siemens farming tip of the week for farmers. Let's hear it.
Well, the tip for today is, number one, guys and gals, have patience. We've got the rain. The harvest will be there. Just make sure you stay safe. That's always something I like to say. Also to the cattle producers, the provincial government, the federal government have put together a transportation program where they can move hay and stuff in from eastern Canada, and it's it becomes really expensive, but the government is helping in that. So my tip to the grain producers, hang in there, be patient. To the cattle producers, take what you can get, and try and not have to sell off that entire herd, but seek help if you need help. But let's continue to move forward together.
As always, Harry Siemens coming through with the great tips for agriculture and farmers here in Manitoba on this week's edition of the Farm Report, finishing off with Siemens says. Harry, we'll see you soon next week on next week's edition of Rise and Shine Manitoba. Until then, man, I hope that you continue to stay in high spirits and stay safe out there.
Okay. Thank you very much, and have a good week.
Thanks, Harry. I'll let you go now. And that was Harry Siemens on the Farm Report on this edition of Rise and Shine Manitoba. Got to get the graphics off. There we go. We're going to take our first commercial break here in today's episode. After the break, I'll be joined by a guy that knows his basketball, Executive Director of Basketball Manitoba, Adam Wedlake, after this commercial break. Stick with us here on Manitoba Show, Rise and Shine Manitoba, here on ASTV Productions.
Why go solar? Solar is better than ever. Our revolutionary design and inverter equipment with the latest in solar panel technology for the ultimate in-home and business security. That's right, I said security. Grid security and security of your home are linked. Fortify your future today with a battery backup system. No maintenance, quiet running. Did you know in Manitoba, grid-connected, off-grid, and battery backup systems are 100% right off in the year you purchase for any company or farm? Do you want to back up your internet, keep your tills running, and the lights on? We can install a system that is right for you with battery backup fully capable of taking on all those essential loads and keeping you running. When you call our experts at Evolve Green, ask about getting your free energy audit today. Call or email today to find out what system works best for you. 1-866-5EVOLVE or support@evolvegreen.ca. Also, be sure to check out our website at www.evolvegreen.ca.
Welcome back to Rise and Shine Manitoba here on ASTV Productions. Of course, Manitoba Show is brought to you by Fabricland Winkler. That's our official sponsor, as well as some other sponsors we got in today's episode, like Evolve Green, who you just heard from. You're going to hear from some, or see some other commercials later on in the show. But yeah, was joined by Harry Siemens in this first part of this episode on the Farm Report, just talking about agriculture here in Manitoba. Always nice to hear from him. And now we're going to talk to another familiar voice, Adam Wedlake, Executive Director of Basketball Manitoba, joining the show now. Adam, it's been a while. How have things been with Basketball Manitoba since the last time that we've talked?
Hey, Graeme, good morning. Good to hear from you and good to see you. We're in better places for sure than we were a few weeks ago, or probably last month, I think, since we last talked. So things are getting busier. I know we've been trying to connect the last few weeks to get our schedules lined up. So that's a good sign because things are starting to hum a bit better, and still some interesting times ahead of us, but we're happy to be a bit more active than we were a couple months ago.
Yeah, for sure. And the last time that we talked, we started to see things opening up in terms of just sports here in Manitoba, basketball being one of those things. How have things changed in the restrictions as of late to allow you guys to start allowing leagues to start opening with registration, stuff like that?
Well, it's been slow for sure, but I guess slow and safe is really what it's about. To do things right, and hopefully we don't have to take steps backwards. But I think we last probably talked was in July or even in June, I think, and we were just starting to enter into our camp season, and those went off with no interruptions, which was nice. Currently, right now, we're in the midst of running our provincial team training camp program here at Sport Manitoba, where I am at right now at the Sport Manitoba courts. And so we've been lucky to get about 80 young Manitobans into the gym that are sort of a little higher level basketball players, and give them a little extra chance at the gym to work with our provincial team coaches, more so to work looking at next summer, the 2022 program. And other parts of basketball are just sort of on the cusp right now. September, we're in September already today. The summer goes fast, and we're shifting into fall mode with different leagues, be it youth or adult, that are just on the cusp of announcing some startups right now.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, in my head, I knew it was September today, but then you put it that way. It's just crazy how this summer just flew by in a flash. I'd snap, but honestly, I'm unable to do that, which is kind of crazy. But, with fall season approaching and the later months approaching, just how many leagues are we going to see here as a preference, that you guys want to run here in the upcoming months with basketball in Manitoba?
Well, we of course want to get everything back to full pre-pandemic levels. We're not that naive to think that there may be some casualties along the way of some smaller programs that are still working their ways to get back, or time has changed. Time has passed. 2 years almost has passed in the life of a young athlete. Sometimes that unfortunately is a vital time that kid who was 15 or 16 at the time when this all started now is, crazy to think, is already probably turning 18. So there's going to be a little bit of change, and I guess basically understanding that it's not going to be 0 to 60 overnight. It's going to take some time to get things back. The other reality that we're still trying to settle in on, I guess, is the vaccination side of things, which is something that the province announced on Friday that does affect sports, not just basketball, but all sports. That, as far as we understand, because we're still waiting to hear from Sport Manitoba and to read the actual public health orders, which are two different things than an announcement or just a media conference. We have to reference the actual legal document that comes out. We've been doing that for a year and a half now, looking and making sure we're doing the right thing at the right time. But basically, it's going to require any adult that's involved with sport, again, not just basketball, but being involved as a coach, as an official, a volunteer, a spectator, which there are still 50% spectator caps right now, and some facilities are still limiting to no spectators, but those that do have to limit it to 50%. But as of this Friday, coming up on the 3rd, there will be a requirement that only fully vaccinated adults will be permitted to enter into indoor sporting facilities, and that includes basketball courts, that's indoor soccer fields, that's hockey rinks, anything indoors will be the same, under the same expectation. So that's new and something we've not dealt with so far in this year and a half plus now. We've been just dealing with restricted on participant numbers and other sort of more of a math thing. Now this is a science thing, so it's a little bit different. So it's different coming, and we'll know in the next few days. We'll communicate it out to our membership, as will, I'm sure, every other sport in Manitoba once a bit more is known.
Yeah, and I've made my opinion clear on vaccines. I think that everyone should get the vaccine, just because, like, why not? Why not get it? The concerns have all been answered with more research that's come out, but that's besides the point. Just talking about a potential plan that you guys might be thinking of to encourage people to get vaccinated, because that's what basketball is going to be that's going to be the important thing with people getting vaccinated for sports to continue to happen, right? So what do you think a plan could be for you guys to, cook up to potentially, influence people to get vaccinated?
We're talking relatively small numbers now, which is good. 6 months ago, we would have been hard to predict that where we are right now, that the uptake has been generally good. But of course, we want to, when we do get back in the gym, we want to have people confident that the space that they're in is as safe as possible. We focus a lot on the safety of sports and basketball all the time with respect to injuries and minimizing risk, whether it's taking away or dealing with a slippery spot on the floor or something that a player could run into or trip on. Again, we want to minimize. That's the best sort of that prevention is the best cure kind of thing. So sort of same idea with respect to vaccinations. We want to ensure that our sport stays open. The values of basketball and I think every other sport in Manitoba is extremely valuable to people's both physical and mental well-being. This has definitely been a trying time for everybody, and if we can do what we can to keep our sports open and active, keep the people on the courts as opposed to courts with the lights off and everybody staying at home, and that's not great for a lot of reasons. So yeah, we've been encouraging as an organization our membership and beyond to get their fully vaccinated status so that we can carry on without any hiccups or more shutdowns, which is never good, because it's we know as soon as the shutdown's going to happen, it's going to be, at least in history so far, it's been at least 2 to 3 months to get back to something in the gym. Our last one that we went through in early May really didn't start settling until July, once we sort of got back to sort of relatively full numbers. So, and that's some of the previous shutdowns as well. So nobody likes them, nobody wants them, but of course they're an unfortunate necessity at times to deal with the health issue. But if we can all get ourselves vaccinated, and then we can minimize that chance or those odds of that happening again, and get back and enjoying life as we know it.
Yeah, for sure. It all rides on people needing to get vaccinated. And I think that, like I said, people should. But, moving away from that, I read on your guys' website that the Junior Bisons Basketball Club is offering mini basket house league and small group training for boys and girls ages 5 to 18. Just how huge is this going to be? I'm not sure how long this is going on or if this has been a new thing that's just been introduced this year, but how huge is this in terms of just getting kids on the court and just the development of basketball here in Manitoba?
Well, it's an exciting time to get back. Last year at this time, we missed an entire club season, which typically starts in mid-August with tryouts and then runs through into the start of the school basketball season, which is usually in late November, and then it quiets for the school basketball season, which goes December through March, and then club basketball kicks up again in April, May, June, and so on. So yeah, we've been a year, actually 2 years, because really it's been the fall of 2019 was the last time we were sort of in this mode. So it's crazy to think that it's been a full two seasons or 2 years of time has passed. But the Junior Bisons, along with many other of our local basketball clubs, are in the midst of just getting themselves ready. And that really the club basketball, we mentioned the Junior Bison program does start a bit younger, and it's more of an in-house program. Club basketball, though, typically is open to roughly ages 12 to 17, boys and girls. And most clubs are back. There's a couple, like I said earlier, about some maybe the smaller ones that are still getting their footing set for getting back in the gym. Probably the biggest challenge we're having actually as a sport, I'm sure most sports are sensing similar bottlenecks, is access to facilities right now. That's the biggest challenge we're facing. So really right now and up since March of 2020, every school basketball facility, to us at least, has been off limits, which that's probably 75% of all facilities in Manitoba are school-based. So if you take away 75% of anything you do, I don't care what it is, you're definitely going to feel the impacts of that. And so we have, and other sports, indoor sports especially, that are limited. If it's an outdoor activity, soccer, baseball, there's fields and pitches and so on out there that you can still access during the summer months. Winter's different. So that's our biggest challenge right now, is being able to get people in the gym, get gyms open. But we understand schools are just literally starting up next week, and they're dealing with a whole new realm of realities in getting kids back in the classroom. So we're hoping in the coming weeks we'll sense a bit more idea of what third-party access like we would be looking at into their gyms on evenings and weekends may look like.
Now, last question before I let you go, or rather than that, for you to tell us about some of these players that have been signing with some teams, players from Manitoba, of course. Could you talk about some of these players that have been signing with some clubs for the upcoming season?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great barometer, actually, we've been having the last number of years, is more and more Manitoba players finishing their basketball careers, whether they're at the post-secondary level in Canada or in the States, and then moving into the next realm of playing in the professional leagues. A lot of them go to Europe. The most recent one is Keith O'Mara, who was a University of Manitoba grad from a few years ago, and he's now signed a pro contract in Spain for the upcoming year. AJ Bassi, another former Bison, just also signed a new contract in England to play in their pro leagues. And Emily Potter, who's played her basketball here at Glenlawn Collegiate in Winnipeg, played at the University of Utah for 4 years and has been a pro for the last few. She's off to Greece. I think even this week she's maybe there by now with her contract. So there's more and more athletes, and it's a great barometer to show the health of our sport, that players are being able to make a career out of this and play. Most players sort of in that pro realm or in their mid-20s, and then they hopefully can get a 5-10 year career down the road and make a career out of playing the sport that they love. So it's great and it's exciting. The other exciting part is looking at the growth of the domestic basketball league, which is getting more and more traction. It's called the Canadian Elite Basketball League. They don't have there's no franchise here in Winnipeg or Manitoba just yet, but we're basically next on the list. Montreal just got the last franchise just in the last few months announced that will kick in. So we're probably looking at potentially the spring of 23 to see a Winnipeg franchise start up here and to be part of that. So that would be to add even just more opportunity for local players to play at the next level. And that's something that's been long overdue in Canada. It's very similar lines to what the CFL that they use to have minimum number of Canadians. They even allow current university CIS or U Sport players to participate in that league without jeopardizing their amateur status. So it's a spring and summer league, so it doesn't conflict schedule wise. So it's a great opportunity. There's a lot of Manitobans who've been part of that as well in the last couple of seasons that league's been going. So yeah, it's exciting to see.
Yeah, for sure. It would be so exciting to see, Manitoba or Winnipeg get a basketball team in that league. And, even though these players aren't going off to the NBA, just to see them going to have opportunities in places like Greece, like England, and some other places as well. It's just phenomenal to see where basketball is at this point in Manitoba, just the talent that is being produced here. Adam, it was a pleasure being joined by you here on Rise and Shine Manitoba. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk in the future sometime for sure.
You as well, Graeme. Good talking to you. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too, Adam. I'm going to let Adam go now. That was Adam Wedlake, Executive Director of Basketball Manitoba, joining this edition of Manitoba's show, Rise and Shine Manitoba. Stick around after the break. I'll be back for the final segment on today's episode, the one and only segment of Graeme's Opinion. Stick around. More Rise and Shine Manitoba after these commercial breaks.
Think Systems Beauty College is a little bit unique in respect to the way we teach our program. We don't do so much structure and learning and block teaching. Everybody can move along at the pace that suits them. teaching. Everybody can move along at the pace that suits them. If they can move faster, they do so. Therefore, learning everything earlier and getting more practice in all segments of hairstyling as opposed to just being stuck in one section for a certain period of time. So we try to accommodate all the different learning styles.
And welcome back to Rise and Shine Manitoba, everybody. Of course, I was joined by Adam Wedlake, Executive Director of Basketball Manitoba, most recently on today's edition of the show. Of course, Harry Siemens joined us first in today's edition of Rise and Shine Manitoba. And yeah, hopefully everyone has enjoyed the show up until this point. We were supposed to have two other guests joining the show today, Noah Slane and Enzo Cepeda of Cancer Care Foundation Manitoba. We'll have them on next week's edition of the show for sure. Just got a bit confused with just setting up the times and stuff like that. But yeah, let's move into this week's edition of Graeme's Opinion. We're going to be talking about three topics today, starting off with the CFL and just looking back at what was the week that just passed? I got week 5 down on here. Recap of week 4. A recap of week 4 in the CFL. That's what we're going to be doing. So, let's go through the games here. So, starting off with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. They were the first game of the week since the Elks and Argos game got canceled. And yeah, Hamilton ends up getting their first win of the season with a 27-10 win in Montreal's home opener. And yeah, the defense was great for Hamilton, forcing Vernon Adams Jr. to make some perfect throws at points. They forced a turnover, and they were able to contain who has been one of the best backs in the league this season and over the past 2 years in, stand back. Only holding him to 40 yards. Dane Evans in his first start of the year played really solid. Played turnover-free football. He missed on some throws. He would have, if he would have hit Speedy B, Brandon Banks on one of his throws, he would have been gone. It was wide open. He missed on that. But when he had to, Evans was making his throws. Hamilton was getting their run game going finally. 144 total rushing yards in the game for them. Sean Thomas Erlington was 73 yards and a TD. And, it's just as the game went along, other than that opening drive for Hamilton where they ended up scoring their touchdown, it was a pretty defensive game, even though the score was 27-10. Hamilton ended up moving ahead quite a bit near the end of the game. But overall, a very impressive performance from the Hamilton Tiger Cats, especially after the start of the season that they did have. Hearing that the secondary that they ended up going with is something that their head coach really wanted at the start. He just wasn't able to get all the pieces in place until last week. And yeah, it's going to be a scary Hamilton defense if they're able to keep that up. Vernon Adams Jr. has been one of the top QBs in the league this season. They really made him struggle in this game. And, it's just one thing that is still a concern for Hamilton, I feel like, is the sacks. Their O-line gave up 6 sacks this week. That's something that I'm definitely going to keep an eye on. Can this Hamilton line hold up against some of the best pass rushes in the league? Weren't able to do that against Winnipeg and Saskatchewan. But yeah, they end up getting the win against Montreal and get that much needed first win of the season. Moving on to the second game of week 4, BC ends up beating the Ottawa Red Blacks 24-12 to move to 2-2 on the season. And yeah, just looking at it, more total yards. They outplayed Ottawa in almost every phase of the game. They had more passing yards to Ottawa's 301 to 206, more rushing yards 99 to 72, and they spread the ball around on offense. BC, just talking about BC, Brian Burnham, Lucky Whitehead with 6 receptions each, Javon Kotoy, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he was their top passing catcher with 93 yards and a touchdown on 5 receptions. And, BC was way better on the run compared to last week against Edmonton when they were carved up by James Wilder Jr. Noted that obviously James Wilder Jr., in my opinion, better than any running back that Ottawa has on their roster. But still, BC held Ottawa under 100 yards on the run. And BC finally got that run game going. Shaq Cooper with 71 yards and a TD. Riley with 3 rushes for 20 yards and a TD. Always love to see a QB getting his rushing yards. And yeah, even though Shaq Cooper only didn't break 100 yards, 71 yards paired with a TD is still solid production. And yeah, BC obviously going up against one of the weaker teams in the league this season, I would say, in Ottawa. But just to see this offense having this type of success with the passing yards, the rushing yards, and finally kind of getting that running game going is definitely nice to see. They just need to capitalize on TDs on their chances more, for sure. Moving on to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the Calgary Stampeders. The Bombers end up beating the Stampeders 18-16 as the Bombers, I gotta stop saying we, as the Bombers stave off a last drive comeback attempt. And I was a bit nervous as a Blue Bomber fan, I won't lie, watching this game in the last drive, just watching Calgary march down the field. Luckily, the field goal was short from Rene Paredes. But yeah, just talking about some strong points from this Blue Bombers team, as well as a strong point from the Calgary Stampeders. Having Harris back was huge. 81 yards and with 17 carries and a TD in his first game back. Pretty solid, just considering the time that he's missed so far this season. And having him back just adds so many more options. Not only do you have to worry about Harris in the run game, but you also have to worry about him in the passing game and with him blocking too. And I think that's why he's been not only the best Canadian in the league, in my opinion, for the past, 3 or 4 years, but the best running back in the league for the past 3 years, winning the last 3 rushing titles in the league. Jake Meyer, is that how you pronounce it? I'm not sure, but Calgary's QB, yeah, we'll go with Jake Meyer. Looked excellent for Calgary. Started off completing 17 straight passes to open up the game, which is just absolutely insane. He was 6 short of tying Mazzoli's record that he set back, I believe it was in 2016. Don't quote me on that. That's what I remember hearing. But, 30 for 39, 307 yards with a guy like Bo Levi Mitchell out to have this type of production from a QB. Speaks volumes about, just the QB depth that Calgary has always had. Back in 2019, they had Nick Arbuckle that was able to back up, Bo Levi Mitchell. And then he went down and, Arbuckle put up some solid production. Could we be seeing the same from Jake Meyer? It's just 1 week, but going up against a Winnipeg defense that's very strong on paper, it was definitely impressive to see. Looking at Zach Calero, 16 for 25, 243 yards. Those completion numbers could have been higher if our receivers didn't drop some passes. He was on the money for a huge part of this game on his passes. And, it really came down to the Bombers receiving core struggling a bit with drops. It was a game of field goals too. Legio for us made 4 for 4 on field goals. Pretty sure it was awarded with something this week as well. And Paredes made 3 for his own sake as well. And the Bombers D, in my opinion, if there's any takeaway from this game, needs to start locking it down. Our offense, as skilled as it is, hasn't really been able to get going to its full potential, in my opinion. And it's really going to depend on our defense in a lot of weeks if that doesn't happen. Of course, having Harris back is huge offensively for the Bombers. But, he's definitely going to have to get it going and spark this offense for sure moving forward, and our receivers need to clean up the drops. But the Bombers defense, sorry if I keep saying our and we, but the Bombers defense, needs to start locking it down. We know they have the talent, the Bombers do, with guys like, with the guys that we got on our defense, there's no reason why we should be giving up the type of yards that we do, but that could also come down to the scheme, the type of zone coverage that the Bombers play. But need to start locking it down. Need to start getting tighter on coverage for the Bombers. And going into Saskatchewan, man, that's going to be a tough matchup for the blue and gold, because in my opinion, Saskatchewan has established themselves as the top dog so far. I think that many people would agree with that, with them being 3-0 to this point in the season. The Bombers, I think, going into that matchup, haven't had much success on Labor Day weekend, but it's going to come down to guys like Harris sparking that offense for the Bombers moving forward into next week. You need the receivers for the Bombers to step it up. You got the talent. Hopefully this week was just an anomaly for the blue and gold with the receivers like that. I wasn't able to watch the Argonauts game the weekend before because I was at the cabin, but overall, this is a game that I think is huge for Winnipeg's confidence. Of course, even though they might not need, the type of confidence that other teams do with the Bombers being the defending champs of the league, but definitely kind of nice to get a scare like this early on in the season where a team like Calgary, who's been one of the top teams in the league, is almost able to come down and beat you with a last second field goal with zeros on the clock. And for us to come away with that win, I think it's not only huge for the standings, but huge for our confidence in a way, huge for the Bombers' confidence in a way, knowing that they can win a game like that. And also, though, you just got to go back to the drawing board and see what can you do better moving forward here, because the type of defensive performance that we put out, even though we only gave up 16 points at this point, Saskatchewan on Labor Day, it could carve us up if the Bombers don't fix some of these issues, man. I kept saying we and our, my apologies. I'll get better on that when it comes to talking to the Bombers. But yeah, next week, not going to do it this week, but going to give you guys my upcoming week predictions for the CFL next week, as well as my power rankings. Wasn't able to prepare that today, but yeah, that's what happened in the games in the CFL this week, in my opinion, for these teams to, why these teams had success. So moving into some hockey now. Henrik Lundqvist talked about it last week, talked about his retirement, and I touched on something, just talking about I think he's a Hall of Famer, but maybe not first ballot. And I wasn't sure, but looking back at it, absolutely. Henrik Lundqvist is not only a Hall of Famer, he's a lock for the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. And I think he gets on the first chance he gets just looking at his resume. One Vezina in his career, one Olympic gold medal in 2006, sixth all-time in wins, consistently took teams to the playoffs when the offense was lacking compared to teams in the division and just in the East, like teams like Pittsburgh and Washington and the other top dogs back then. A guy that would play a lot of games in a season and would stay consistent in those games, being one of the top goaltenders in the league for a very long time. Arguably at points, Henrik Lundqvist was the best goaltender in the world. And I think at points he was, and he was always in his prime, considered among the top goaltenders with guys like a Carey Price, and he played in an era with all-time great goaltenders like Broder, Price, Fleury, and Quick, in his prime, of course, for Quick. But, just to be able to, more so with guys like Price and Fleury to be as good as them, if not maybe even better at points in his career. And both of those guys just speaks, especially in his Vezina year, just speaks volumes about what type of player Henrik Lundqvist was. And he played against some of the best talent to touch the ice in this game, the Crosbys, the Ovechkins, the Canes, the Malkins. And then he had a chance to also play against the newer generation, even though he was, nearing the end of his prime when McDavid and guys like Eichel came into the league. But even though he wasn't the same dominant goaltender as he was before, when those guys started heating up and being top players in the league, like the McDavids, the McKinnons, and the Kucherovs, the Matthews, and the Draisaitl, he played against a lot of strong competition in his career. And I'll be frank with you, if Henrik Lundqvist wasn't on the New York Rangers, as good as those teams were at points, he made them a cup contender every season. And you got to think, if Henrik Lundqvist is on a team like the Washington Capitals, which is funny because that's where he was going to end up if he didn't end up having his heart surgery and having problems. Well, not heart surgery, but his heart condition. And, it would have been crazy to see him finish off his career with another team. It would have been odd. But if he would have played with, maybe another team that, what was in contention for the cup pretty much in almost every season for, in the 2010s, the teams like the Pittsburghs, like the Washingtons, Boston comes to mind as well. If he was able to be on a team like that, we could be looking at Henrik Lundqvist, maybe not even having just one cup, but multiple cups as well. He was the backbone, the heart of that New York Rangers team, that franchise, for his career there. And yeah, just consistent numbers, sixth all-time in wins, an Olympic gold medal, one Vezina, playing against some of the best talent to ever touch the ice, being consistent in the games he played, and also making it to a cup final as well. It's not like he never had a chance to make it to the cup. He ended up making it to the cup, but obviously losing to a stacked LA Kings team at the time. And like I said in last week's episode, it's hard to win a cup in this league, no matter who you are. Some of the best teams that we see some years don't even end up winning the cup in the end. A team like most recently Colorado, a team that was so stacked and has Stanley Cup potential, hasn't been able to get it done. It takes time, and unfortunately for Henrik, he didn't have enough time to be able to win a cup. But yeah, in my opinion, put that man in the Hall of Fame, one of the best goaltenders of my generation of me watching hockey. Can't speak for the other generations because I wasn't alive to watch those in like the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, stuff like that, even early 2000s with me being born in 2001. But Henrik Lundqvist, absolutely the king. Put him in the Hall of Fame, and the first chance you get, put him in there because what he did for the game of hockey in terms of goaltenders, inspiring so many young goaltenders as well. I think that's a huge part of it. Maybe not as huge as the other things, but just his impact on the game will not be forgotten, I think, for some players out there, just the way that he was able to play. And I think that the way that young kids just were inspired by Henrik. So yeah, Hall of Famer for me, first ballot, put him in. He's a lock. Talking about one last thing here. We'll try to keep this one shorter. Robot umpires. My girlfriend, Laura Prokop, her dad, her whole family, huge baseball family. And we've had this conversation many times about robot umpires. Should they be allowed in the MLB? And, just looking at it, I read a news story. There's been other leagues that have been using this technology. It seems like the technology has gotten better and better. And, just with the anger and frustration of some batters out there with umpires and their calls in baseball, you could, say, yeah, there should be robot umps in the sport. And I'm not a huge baseball guy. I watched a few innings here or there when there's nothing much on it. It's not really my sport to watch, but I do watch the World Series. And let me tell you, I watched the playoffs and the World Series. And let me tell you, if I'm a player and it's a crucial out in the playoffs, this is just an example, and it's a questionable call, and I feel like it should be reviewed, and it's not able to be reviewed, and that could cost my team the game, I'd be pretty mad. You don't want to make excuses for the umps or the refs making bad calls, but there comes a line. Say it's a really bad call. In my opinion, and it's never been done before, I know that I think that people have brought up this point before. I think that robot umps should be included in the MLB, but they shouldn't take over the game. I still think umpires should have jobs in the MLB, but in my opinion, if it's a third strike call and it's questionable, you should be able to look at it and challenge it and give that decision to the robot umps. And they'll probably make the right call because of just how the technology has come along and stuff like that. In my opinion, I don't think human umpires should ever be taken out of the game. I just don't think that wouldn't be right. You'd take away job opportunities. There's a lot of umps out there and a lot of refs that are proud of reffing, and they get so much abuse, and we forget that they're human beings and it's human error. But I don't think you should take them out of the game completely. I think that the perfect situation was bring robot umps into the MLB and use them for calls like third strikes or balls, stuff like that. And yeah, I think that would be the best way of looking at it, in my opinion, because yeah, in my opinion, you can't just take human umpires out of the game. In my opinion, I don't stand by that. Even though that they do make some questionable calls at times, I don't think the solution would be just going with robot umps, because you never know, there could be some malfunctions in the technology. I know that there's been questions about can they handle the breaking ball, stuff like that. I'm not sure, but yeah, my opinion on that is have robot umps there, but still have real umpires on the field, and you can challenge third strike calls, stuff like that, if you really need to, because those are what could determine a missed call could determine could swing momentum, stuff like that. And in a game, even though, like I said, you don't want to always blame the refs when you lose games, but sometimes there could be a call so atrocious that or is questionable that it would suck not to argue it. So yeah, that is my opinion on not only robot umps here on Graham's opinion, but my opinion on Henrik Lundqvist getting into the Hall of Fame, as well as the CFL Week 4 recap here on Graham's Opinion. My apologies once again for everyone. I'm trying to get away from calling the Winnipeg Blue Bombers when I refer to them we and our, because, that is my team. I've made that pretty clear, me being from Winnipeg, Manitoba, but yeah, I'm going to try getting away from that. I'm going to get away from that, and if I don't get away from that, someone call me out on that. But yeah, that's going to do it for this edition of Graham's Opinion on Rise and Shine Manitoba. And that's going to do it for today's edition of Rise and Shine Manitoba as a whole. I want to thank Harry Siemens and Adam Wedlake for taking the time out of their Wednesday morning and joining this edition of Rise and Shine Manitoba. I want to thank you, the viewer, for tuning in on this Wednesday morning as well and choosing to watch Manitoba's show on ASTV Productions, as well as to our sponsors in Fabricland Winkler, Evolve Green, AETI, and Systems Beauty Colleges for sponsoring this edition of the show. I'll be back on next week's edition of Rise and Shine Manitoba, potentially just realizing now that I might be out at the cabin for Labor Day weekend, but we're going to try to get an episode out for you guys next week. But it's going to go at 10 a.m. Central Daylight Time. As always, you can catch it on our Facebook at ASTV Productions, on our website at astvproductions.com, as well as on our Twitter at Amateur Sports TV. And yeah, we'll update everyone on our social media pages near the end of this week or on the weekend if there's going to be a Rise and Shine Manitoba next week. But until then, until I see you next time, folks, on Rise and Shine Manitoba, I've been your host, Graeme Forsyth, signing off. Now, have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Stay safe out there and have a wonderful weekend as well. And for everyone that is trying to get through the work week, just remember it's halfway over. So you're halfway there. Stay strong out there, everyone. Stay safe. Have a good one. See you next time.